Welcome to the Weekly Business Hour, where each week we give you the best in business news that you can use, tips and information on how you can make your business more profitable, and hear from a special business guest who will share their own experiences in running their business. Our guest this week is Andy Bohlig, one of the owners of Papa Murphy's Pizza with a location here in Conroe at 1304 West Davis. I am your host, Rick Schissler, Silver Fox Advisor, who personally has 40 plus years of experience as a serial entrepreneur. So sit back, pull out your pad and pencil, and get ready to take notes. Good morning, this is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox Advisor, welcoming you to this week's version of the Weekly Business Hour. As always, we have a good program for you. We have some tips and news I would do that I hope will help you and help you today in your business. We also have a great guest here, a young entrepreneur, Andy Bohlig. He and his partner are starting Papa Murphy's here in the Conroe area. They have a store and are getting ready to open a new one in the Woodlands. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Rick. Thank you for having me.
Well, first, what we're going to do is take a little bit of time and talk about some news items and particularly some tips. One of the things about the new year, and we've been talking about that, is New Year's resolutions and doing different things to get set up, putting together plans, budgets, and so on and so forth. And one of the issues I came across recently that I found very interesting, and that is the ability for a business of any size in particular, assuming you have one employee or you're solo or you have 1,000 employees, because the lending market changes, and a lot of that, of course, is driven by interest rates and government rules and regulations, which most of us know. In 2013, the regulations on the banking system became tighter and tighter. It seems like in Washington, the one thing they don't understand, the tighter they make it, the harder they make it to borrow money. And this particularly, in my opinion, impacts the smaller businesses, particularly like we have here in the Montgomery area. But let's kind of take a moment and review the type of loans that are out there. If you've put into your business plan to buy some new equipment, to do an expansion, to build a new location, you're going to be looking to borrow money, most likely to pay for all or part of that purchase. The basic loan that most of us like to get is from a commercial bank. Bank loans have been around for a long time. The interest rates usually are reasonable or fair, if interest rates could ever be called fair, if you're the businessman or the borrower. But doing business with a commercial bank is really safe. It's straightforward. Typically now, today, due to government regulation in particular, there's lots of paperwork, though. But you get to build a relationship with your banker. You get to make deposits. You typically have your checking account there for your business, a lot of times personally. But they're the number one, or were the number one source of lending to smaller businesses. And again, have become very comfortable part of the scene as far as borrowing money. But there have been other things that have taken their places, and let's kind of review some of those things. In particular for startups, over the past, I'd guess, 20 years, credit cards have become a popular place. You know, credit cards have not been around for that long of time, less than 50 years. But in the last 10 to 20 years, the use of a credit card to borrow, particularly, again, to start a business or even a mature business to finance inventory. If you have seasonal inventory, such as a holiday period, a lot of people will put it on a credit card and then pay the balance off over a period of several months. Now, the one thing about credit cards that you need to be aware of, if you are not already, is the general interest rate on credit cards has drifted upward. The average interest rate on credit cards now is 15 to 18%. And there are a lot of them out there, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, that'll even be 20, 25%. So you need to be careful if you're thinking about borrowing from a credit card or it's been some time since you've used a credit card, be sure to check your interest rate. Because, you know, if you pay 20% interest on money that you borrow, that adds up very quickly. And if you can look at one of these scenarios that I see from time to time, they show how hypothetical, if you borrow $10,000 at 20%, how many months it's going to take to pay it back. And it really stretches out, and you end up paying a whole lot of interest. So be careful when you borrow against your credit card. But again, it's a very popular way, particularly when you're starting a business, because it's accessible, it's there. Another way to borrow money, particularly if you have receivables in your business, is factoring. Factoring in general, in my opinion, has gotten a bad name out there, and in many cases, it's not right. There are a lot of good factoring companies around. You just, like any business, you've got to go out in the marketplace and you need to interview or talk to 2 or 3 people at least that are in the factoring business. In particular, one of the silver foxes in the past was a man who was in the factoring business. He had a background in banking. He was a public CPA accountant, and he ran a real good business. And his factoring business has just grown at an exceedingly unbelievable rate. Understand a little bit of the basics, though, about how factoring works. The factoring company typically borrows money, a lot of times from a commercial bank, and then they mark the money up. In other words, they charge an additional interest rate to make the spread, and that's how they make their money. Factoring in general is going to charge you 1% per month, sometimes up to 1.5%, depending on type of receivable. And they'll loan you typically somewhere around 80%, maybe more on your receivables, and they charge the rate into it. It's an easy process, but you have to qualify. Again, the factoring company is going to want to see your financials, similar to a bank. Usually the paperwork's not as extensive, but it gives those people who have a business where the receivables go up and down on a month-to-month basis a place to put the receivables and convert them into cash. But you have to make sure, of course, that your margins that you have in your business are large enough to cover the cost of the factoring. But again, I think factoring has taken a bad rap. I've met several people in the greater Houston area that run legitimate first-class lending operations, and they're in the factoring business. So you just have to be aware of that. So that possibility exists for you as well. Another source of funds for your business are family and friends. This is typically a source sought out by startup businesses. Family and friends are a source of funds for people who are starting businesses, and you just need to be aware of that. That has its pros and cons, of course. Families and friends can be some of the most difficult lenders, in fact, because of the social, emotional relationship. My main recommendation is if you do borrow from family and friends, that you do so on somewhat of an arm's length basis, that you sign the necessary documentation, such as a note, if you need, a security agreement, and that you pay those notes in a timely manner, so that family or friend relationship that's probably more important than the borrowing and lending relationship, that it be maintained in a proper way. But you can always turn to family and friends to find a source of funds. Usually the amounts available are not very large. And again, usually this is a type of financing that someone seeks out when they start a business. Another time that I see people seek out the family friend financing is when they're, in a spot of trouble. They've run into a problem, a little hiccup, and they need some money to get them through it, and they turn to family and friends for that. So again, my recommendation, keep it at arm's length, document it just like a bank would as far as have a signed note, due date, payments, and be sure you, if you're the borrower, make those payments on time. Another source, and this is the one I ran across in reading an article earlier this week in the Wall Street Journal, and it's an alternative lenders. There's sprung up an entire industry over the last few years of lenders, and these lenders now have gotten to be quite large. They've got $100, $200, $300 million of loans outstanding. And let me give you an example from the article that I read in the Journal back on January 7th. Article by Gene Duggan and Ruth Simon mentions a family needed $180,000 to open up their 13th nail salon in the Philadelphia area. But their credit score, because of the bad times, business had been slow, it dropped. So they didn't go to the bank because he figured the bank would put him through the ringer, take weeks and weeks to make a decision, and then ultimately would reject them. So they contacted a company, Swift Capital in this case, that was located in Delaware, and he says they took his financial records. They also checked out his social media sites, which this is a kind of an interesting twist to this kind of lending. They want to see how popular the business is. In other words, they go to Yelp, which is a social media site that rates businesses where customers can go on and rate a business. They also went to Facebook to look for reviews. Wanted to make sure, I guess, from a social media point of view, that the business was viable and doing well. Well, within a few days, they wired him the money he needed to open up this new location. It's pretty amazing. But he's paying 14.9% interest over the loan's 6-month term. So two things stood out to me in this article. and in the examples I gave, the terms of these loans tend to be less than a year. Some are 3 months, some are 6 months, some are a year, and the interest rates can get up to be pretty high. So just for that period of time, he's paying 14.9% for 6 months. Now, you almost have to double that, in fact, more than double that, to figure out what his annual interest rate is, which is how you would compare that to the cost of a bank loan. So the interest rates are high, but what people seem to like about this is the fact that they get an answer within a day or two. In other words, they're not left waiting. It says most of the businesses that use this kind of lending are restaurants, auto body shops, beauty salons, retailers, even physicians, looking for about $35,000 to $50,000. And so it's just really interesting to me that they can basically, it's almost like an online lender, but it isn't. But that's how you supply all the information electronically. You don't walk into a store or storefront and talk to someone typically, apparently, and then they turn around and give you an answer, wire the money into your bank account. So people are paying these high interest rates, again, 25, 35% annually. They're paying these interest rates because they get it quick, they get it easy, and they know their chances of being turned down are fairly slim. Though in one company, they said they only accept about 25% of their applicants. Now, where do these companies get the money they lend? Well, believe it or not, companies like Goldman Sachs and some of the big financial institutions in the country actually put packages of loans together and loan these companies like Swift Capital, loan them the money. And then they turn around, again, like a factorer, they mark it up, and then they loan it out. But obviously, with these kinds of interest rates that they're doing, they're getting 10 to 15% margin on their loans. So they're making a lot of money. So this has become a new area. It's an area that I would recommend to you and to my clients to be careful. Be sure you can afford that interest rate. It's sad that our planning mechanisms aren't better, that we don't plan out in advance where we have a chance to check out alternatives. And that was kind of my personal take on this type of lending. It's kind of like we get to the point, we want to expand, we want to buy a piece of equipment, and then where are we going to get the money? And we run out, hey, we find it quickly down here, and these people charge a large premium for that. So like anything, when you're going to make an expansion, build a building, buy some equipment, you got to plan for it. You got to put it in your annual plan. And I don't want to drive that into the ground, but that also would save you, in my opinion, a lot of interest. Now, if you have credit issues, like was mentioned in the original story, but these guys are opening their 13th location in the story that was given. So they've got to have some credit, some assets, obviously would have a track record, but they were afraid their bank just wouldn't come through because banks are fairly tight on making certain kinds of loans these days. So they felt it was easy, quick, and they could pay the loan back, and the store would be paid off and operating, hopefully at a profit. So that's our tips for today. I appreciate you listening to this. We're going to take a short break now and come back, and when we do, we're going to have Andy Bohlig. He's going to talk to us about the pizza business and operating it and some of the exciting things that he has gone through as a new entrepreneur. If you'll bear with us, we'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Hi, this is Erica Tullis, Executive Director of the Breast Cancer Charities of America. The Breast Cancer Charities of America is a national nonprofit organization with our headquarters in The Woodlands, Texas. We focus on non-invasive breast cancer research and helping the true patient that is going through breast cancer. Through our Help Now Fund, we help women pay the rent and utilities while going through their breast cancer treatment. It's unlike any other program that truly is out there. We are here to help the woman. Our phone number is 936-231-8460. For more information or to get involved or to even make a donation, please visit our website, www.igopink.org.
Let's go to Lukenbach, Texas.
Tired of Waylon, Willie, and the boys? Join me, Gordon Lockhart, for Beethoven, Bach, and the Boys. Every Saturday from 8 to midnight on Lone Star Classical Music After Dark. Symphonies, concertos, and sonatas by composers such as Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and Bernstein. That's Lone Star Classical Music After Dark. Every Saturday from 8 to midnight on irlonestar.com.
This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, welcoming you back to the next portion of our show of the Weekly Business Hour. And as I mentioned before we took the break, we have in the studio today with us Andy Bohlig, who is an entrepreneur, and he and his partner have opened up their first Papa Murphy's Pizza and literally in the process of doing their second. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Yeah.
Well, I think this is really cool. We've got a real entrepreneur here in the studio. Entrepreneur meaning like a lot of our listeners and folks I've interviewed before have started businesses, but you're out there doing it right now, real time.
Yeah, we just opened our first Papa Murphy's. It's a take and bake pizza place. So it's actually the fastest growing pizza franchise in the country right now. We just surpassed Little Caesars as the fourth biggest pizza place in the country. So it's new down to Houston. I think we were the 16th store to open up. We opened our doors in Conroe right off of 105 and 45 October 13th of this year. So business over the last 3 months has been really, really good. Seen a lot of repeat customers, seen a lot of new people trying out the product because it is a new product down in the Houston area. But no, we're just really excited about the positive feedback we've gotten and excited to get this second store open off of 242 here. We've had some issues. I'm sure we'll get into it in this hour, but yeah, we're excited.
Well, let's just say you've experienced entrepreneurship at its best and worst, perhaps, in starting a business. Let's talk about the product that you have. What makes Papa Murphy's Pizza different than all the other pizzas that are out there?
Well, the biggest difference and the thing you'll see immediately once you get in the store is we're actually a take and bake pizza place. So we don't have any pizza ovens in our store. We don't cook the pizza for you. What we do is we make everything fresh in the morning, from all the dough to all the cheese, all the vegetables. Nothing is ever frozen. We get fresh shipments every day. So it's very, very fresh ingredients. And then we make the pizza however you'd like right in front of you, sort of like a Subway make line. It's very similar to that. And then at the end, it comes on a plastic tray that you actually slide into your oven, bake at 425 degrees for about 12 to 18 minutes, and it's good to go. So that's kind of the biggest difference, is we don't actually bake the pizzas for you. So that's a little interesting. And then the other difference, like I said, is our food quality is second to none. We have everything is fresh. We don't ever, we hand make our dough. We don't have frozen dough that, gets recycled. And the other nice thing about it too, when you bake it at home, you're not waiting 30 minutes for a pizza delivery guy to bring it in that box where it gets all soggy and cold. You pull it out of your oven and your whole house smells amazing. All the family comes down and it's piping hot when it comes out of the oven.
Is that your big selling idea, is that the fact that I have a hot pizza there?
Yeah, so our target market is, the young families between 28 and 36, the moms that are super busy, that have softball and basketball practice, and that they don't want to, they don't want to have to cook an hour meal for their family and have the big cleanup, but they still want to feel like they did something for their family. They still want to give them the healthy, good option. And so, we were kind of there for that. They can call ahead. We'll have the pizza ready when they come in. They pick it up. It takes 20 minutes tops to bake it, and then that whole aroma fills your house, and it kind of brings everyone together. So that's our target market, is the young families. But even college kids, it's great for. We're right next to Lone Star College off of 242, and we have pretty much affordable pizza from, we have a $6 pizza all the way up to a $18 pizza. So, there's different markets that, people are looking for a lot of gourmet stuff now, a lot of fresh ingredients, a lot of different ingredients. We've been testing out a few different high quality recipes that are going to be kind of being rolled out throughout the market in the next few months. And so we're kind of seeing a resurgence in that market now that the economy is picking up, and we're getting less away from the value pizzas and more into the upper. But we still have a wide variety of pizzas that we are able to offer the consumer.
Well, let me ask you something, a little bit about your background. Tell us about your business background.
So I'm originally from Minneapolis. I can't stand the cold weather, so I knew I was going to get out of the tundra immediately. I went to Arizona State my freshman year of college. I was going to try and play golf over there. I ended up breaking my hand, and some few things went wrong over there. I ended up transferring to TCU in Fort Worth. So I went to TCU. I've been down in Texas since 2007. I played football at TCU. I was a finance and entrepreneurial management major at TCU. So I always knew I wanted to get into business. I had, grand visions of being a stockbroker on Wall Street and, the Wolf of Wall Street dream and all that stuff. And as I got closer and closer to graduation and started doing interviews at investment banks and stuff like that, and talked to my friends that were in the industry, they all kept complaining about the 100-hour work weeks and, being driven by some, heartless, managing director that, was on top of you. You have no life, just, your 20s are basically gone. And so I kind of started looking at other things, because, I didn't necessarily want to give my entire youth up, graduating and everything. And it's a great time right now. So I knew that I always had a little bit of an entrepreneur in me. I'm not very good with authority. I like kind of doing my own thing on my own. I don't like being micromanaged. I like a lot of room to do my own thing. And so that was kind of always in the back of my mind. And I graduated with a finance degree, like I said, and my dad's a State Farm agent. So I had some insurance background. I got hired by the largest private insurance wholesaler in the country right out of college. Couldn't really turn the job down because it was in 2010, right at the kind of the peak of the downturn. And I'm not going to turn down a job. My parents would have killed me. So I took the job with Burns & Wilcox, and from about the second week on, I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it. Insurance is not the most glamorous, not the most exciting, but it's very important and it's great and it's always going to be there. But it just wasn't something that excited me. I woke up in the morning kind of dreading going to work, and I was at work and I was looking at the clock, every 15 minutes, waiting for 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock to hit. And I knew that's not how I wanted to live my life. I wanted to find something that I'm passionate about, and that was, being an entrepreneurial management major at TCU. One of my favorite teachers said, find your passion in life, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's kind of how always sports was with me. It was always passionate for me. It was never a job, but I always strove to succeed because it's what I cared about. And so I kind of wanted to find something similar to that in the business world because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I knew I needed to stick with the Burns & Wilcox job for about a year and a half. And towards the end of my time there, I was kind of starting to look around at different opportunities. And one of my friends at TCU, we lived together, was kind of coming to the same point in his career right out of college and just had quit his job as a supply chain major to try and start a printing company. His parents have a printing thing in India, and so he was going to try and start kind of a printing company in the United States, and started doing that right at the same time as I was finishing up at Burns & Wilcox. And I actually remember flying to Florida to visit my grandparents and my mom, and I had Entrepreneur magazine out, and they have their Hot 100 list of the best franchises every year that they put out. And this was now in 2012, and I was kind of flipping through it, and I noticed that Papa Murphy's was at number 7 on the Hot 100. And as I said, I'm from Minnesota, and so they've had that back in Minnesota since 1998. My dad used to bring it home every Tuesday and Thursday because he couldn't cook for crap. And so, we'd have that food, and I always knew the product was great. And the fact that you don't have pizza ovens, which are a big capital investment, kind of caught my eye. And so we started doing a lot of research on that and more, and the pieces just kind of fell together, and the rest is history, kind of as they say. So.
Well, that's kind of interesting, the fact that you had that magazine and you had a chance to, make a choice. We've had several people on here. In fact, we had an expert back last spring who actually helps people decide what franchises are right for them. And so people are always kind of interesting. If they're going to start a business, they look around, and I always encourage them, if they come to me for advice, to take a look at franchising because I think it fits a lot of situations. Mm-hmm. How has franchising been for you? Has it been a plus or a minus?
In my experience, it's been really, really good. I'm 26, so I don't have a ton of experience in the business world. I'm somewhat intelligent, but I'm not, I don't know anything by any means. It would have been a huge, huge undertaking to have to go from scratch, build a business plan, get all the financing. The outside financing is with Papa Murphy, so we didn't get in-house financing, but even just having, your manuals, your procedures done, we had 4 weeks of training where I actually went to a store in Arizona and learned pretty much from a general manager's perspective how to do everything from opening the store to closing to hiring to, you name it in the store, we learned how to do it. And then we had 2 weeks of training at corporate headquarters in Vancouver, Washington. And that kind of went into the back of house, your point of sale systems that they set you up with, tax system stuff. We went into some Obamacare discussion, and, that's still confusing for everyone. But the support that we've been given has been invaluable, and obviously you have to you pay up front for it. I think it depends on what company you're getting involved in, but the initial franchise fee was not that high for Papa Murphy's. Our net royalty per week that we have to pay is pretty low on the franchise scale. I know Subway I think is at 8% of net. I think it's not even net. I think it's of gross weekly sales now, which would be rough. We're at 5% of net weekly sales that we pay back to the company, which is a pretty good number. And like I said, it's worth having that trade-off because we have support. If anything ever goes wrong, I can make a phone call and be in contact with 2 or 3 people that know exactly how to get me out of a situation. So from a first-time business owner's perspective, it's fantastic because you do have support and you feel like you have a lifeline. You're not out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with, just bobbing and, floating and treading water.
Yeah.
you've got a lifeline there.
Well, and that's the big thing I think franchising can provide to people, that it does take care of a lot of things that some people just really don't want to work, mess with or deal with. Whatever it is, the franchise provides you a book, if you will, a plan that it'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
And I happen to believe it's a good alternative for a lot of people versus just starting something from scratch. That's interesting. You've got a new location. You're getting ready to open. You've had some challenges you mentioned we were visiting with contractors, and that's not uncommon in building a space out.
Yeah.
When do y'all plan to open that location?
It's going to come down to when the fire marshal can get in there and do their last inspection. I hope that they'll be able to get in Wednesday. Thursday, I hope, is at the latest. So we should be open Thursday of this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're right on top of it.
Right on top. I've got about 12 interviews I'm doing later this afternoon to hire some kids for the store. But other than that, yeah, we're coming down to the wire. It should have been open a week and a half ago, and we'll probably get into the discussion and the problems I've had with the contractor. But we've kind of been set by some setbacks and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but that's not uncommon in the construction world. So.
Well, and I think we're going to take a break here a little bit when we come back, and Andy's kind of alluded to it a couple times. I think he's got a good story of some things when you're building out a location or you're starting a business, some of the things that you can run into, and maybe he'll have a tip or two on how you try to get through those things. So if you'll stick with us, we'll be back in just a moment and continue our interview with Andy Bohlig of Papa Murphy's Pizza. Thank you.
It takes something special to make it in the business world. Montgomery County is fortunate to have a diverse pool of industries and businesses. Join me, Cassandra Roshan, Director of Membership Development with the Greater Conroe, Lake Conroe Area Chamber of Commerce, for Mind Your Business. I will sit down with our chamber members to talk history, community involvement, and get some tips of the trade on how to be successful in our current business environment. Tune in on the third Tuesday of each month at 11 a.m. to hear from our members of the Greater Conroe, Lake Conroe Area Chamber of Commerce talk about their professional experiences. I guarantee you will walk away with insight of how to mind your business.
At Jazzy Junk, volunteers reclaim, restore, and recycle. Jazzy Junk is a non-profit resale storefront where you will discover wonderful, unique finds at very affordable prices on furniture, antiques, books, art, home decor, and more. When you shop Jazzy Junk, you support New Danville, a community for adults with developmental disabilities. We receive new donations daily, so plan a visit to Jazzy Junk today to find that perfect item or gift. Our motto is here today, gone today, so remember to hurry in and shop often for the best selection. Jazzy Junk is located in the outlets at Conroe on League Line Road and I-45 North. Call 936-441-4500 or visit our website, jazzyjunk.org, that's Junque, for more information and store hours.
This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, welcoming you back to today's interview on the Weekly Business Hour. We have Andy Bohlig here with Papa Murphy's Pizza, and we've been talking about the uniqueness of that product. And now I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about running the business. Running a pizza business is some ways similar to any business. Andy's got a couple things, though, I think that would be interesting to talk about. First, let's touch on the fact that, and we kind of left the last segment at this. Andy, you've been building a new location. You ran into a problem with your contractor running out of money or whatnot, and subs basically walking off the job a week ago. You got any ideas or tips that you could help people that when they get into building a new space that might help them prevent these problems?
Yeah, so our first store that we used our general contractor. Was really pleased with them, did a really good job. We were trying to get open quickly before Halloween, so it was kind of the deadline that we were back up against. And so he did a real good job, built our first store in about 25 days, which is about 6-7 days faster than average for Papa Murphy's as a whole. And so we knew that we were going to be opening a second location towards the end of the year, and we knew that he would probably get quite a bit of requests from Houston franchisees to start building their stores. And so we wanted to lock him down and make sure that he was ready to work on our store for the second part of the second store, excuse me. And so we signed a contract with him right after we opened our first store to build the second store. And one of the issues we ran into at the first store is the tile that we use in the front of the house is a little bit difficult. It comes shipped from Italy, and it's got to go through some customs thing in New York. So there's a back order and there's a process. And so we wanted to avoid that and get all the materials so that they would all be ready to go. Once we get the permits in the Woodlands, we could just go ahead and build that out in 15 days. So we signed the contract with him in October, gave him $51,000 originally to get all the materials, get all that stuff so it was ready to go. And as the project started going, and after we got the permits, and as the demolition started and everything like that, he's not based out of Houston; he's based out of Kansas. One of the contractors that Papa Murphy's had recommended to us, and we did the checking out, and like I said, he did a very good job on our first one. And the lead subcontractor that's kind of in charge of everything when Darren was not in the area was kind of calling me and talking to me saying, we've had a few issues. We don't have all the materials that we need. We haven't gotten paid for some things. And so that was probably a week and a half ago, and it was the first time that I'd learned that something was a little bit amiss with the general contractor. And so I called him up and, was saying, hey, where's the check for Sherwin-Williams? They're supposed to put some epoxy down in the back that was kind of necessary. And he said, oh, it should be there tomorrow. I FedExed it. It'll be there tomorrow. And this was on a Thursday. And so I called up there on Friday saying, has the check arrived yet or anything? Is anything gone? And they said, nope, not yet. And I called the lead subcontractor back at the store. And he said, he sent me a check, but he said that there won't be money in the account until Monday, but to go ahead and pay with the check because it won't be run through until Monday. And he said, I'm not going to do that because he's the local guy here and he's not going to go passing off bad checks at places. So that was the first time I'd really kind of learned that, there was a cash flow issue with our contractor. And so I called him and said, where are we at with our money flow situation? From my looks of things, looking into the store, you haven't put $60,000 worth of work into it, which is kind of what we've given you so far. So can you please get me an accounting of where money has gone? And that was on the weekend. And so I got the sheet back on Monday and went through it with our subcontractor that was at the site and just kind of went through and said, 80% of this is bogus, just trying to make numbers up to get to a number that you had asked to get to. And so that was kind of at the point where, emergency, red lights going off, he's kind of making stuff up. Where's the money now? And, we have, I think the total build out for our store is about $105,000. Well, 60% of that's already been given to him, and we only can account for 20%. So now you're kind of getting into, where is this money? What's going to happen? That's when you kind of start freaking out, because the worst thing that could happen is construction stops. We start paying rent at the end of January, and now we've got a spot that's not generating any revenue, and it's costing us money. And so, the last week has been basically going back from the general contractor to the subcontractor, trying to verify things, going to the bank, discussing with the bank to try and get some alternate financing to keep the project going, at least until we can somehow get some money back from the contractor. So at this point right now, he's not really in town, hasn't been forthright in providing the legal documents and the receipts and all the hard copy stuff. All the Excel spreadsheets are good and said, but you can't prove that to me. At this point, there's no trust left in the relationship. And so it's a difficult situation because there's really very little you can do beforehand to verify a general contractor's cash flow situation. Then they're not going to readily turn over their bank account statements, and you really don't have a way of knowing until it's too late. But you always want to have. It's good to have someone on the construction site, if it's not the general contractor, that's going to be willing to be honest and forthright with you. It's super important that, if you're building something, that you're there every day checking it out. You don't have to sit there all the time, but at least you want the workers to know that you're there, that you have an idea of what's going on. Like I said, be friendly with the guys. There's no point in yelling at them or trying to make them, because it's only going to affect, you have to be as open and friendly as possible while still making sure that they're getting the work done, what they need to do. And then just, obviously when you run into a problem like we had where there's going to be some legal ramifications, you obviously have to seek counsel. So we talked to an attorney already. You had some very good advice for me, with regards to a lot of times these contractors are not from your state. They're from out of town or from out of state. And so you have to check with attorneys and laws in that state that they reside in to make sure that you're crossing all your T's and dotting your I's to make sure you get your money back. So.
Well, I think building a store out like that, particularly when it's a location like you say, you got a lot of pressures, open, rent, and so on, rent to pay, even if you're not open. it's a real challenge, and it's an area that most people have no experience in. They go build their first store, and I think that you've done a great job in trying to catch up with this situation, so to speak. But I think that's interesting. One of the other things you and I talked about that I feel that would be important for all our listeners, and is the fact that you've been hiring a lot of people because you started a new store a few months ago, getting ready to open another one. Talk to us about your hiring process. Anything you do that's unusual or different in hiring people?
Sure. So we need a ton of employees to run our pizza store. We run a pretty lean operation. I think I hired about 15 people from our first location. Probably do about the same in the second location. It's always better to hire more and whittle back. You don't ever want to be understaffed because that suffers your customer perception of your service and everything like that. I was a waiter and a server throughout college, putting myself through college. I worked at Joe T. Garcia's, which is a Mexican restaurant in Fort Worth, and then I worked at Houston's restaurant down in Houston when I first moved down here. And Houston's is renowned for their service and their really good just training and everything like that. And so that kind of had an effect on me and what I go through when I look for people to hire. Now, obviously, if you're hiring for an accounting firm, it's going to be different than if you're hiring for a fast food place. In my case, and in most cases, truthfully, customer service is the number one thing above all. You can make up for a lot of bad things in your store as long as you deliver a superior customer service and you make the customer feel like they're appreciated and that they want to come back and they'll be treated like, they want to be treated when they come into your store. So, I don't have a ton. It's not rocket science building a pizza. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for personality. I'm looking for someone that can talk to people, that is outgoing, that's friendly, that smiles a lot. Those are things you really can't teach. One of the things I do for really relatively early on in the interview process, I ask them to tell me about their passion, what they're passionate about. It kind of sets them at ease. There's a lot of these kids, it's their first job, their first interview. I remember my first interview, you're nervous as hell when you're doing it. And so I want to get them in a comfortable position where see what they're going to be like in an everyday setting. And so when you ask them that, it kind of puts them off of, being nervous, and you'll get to kind of see a more truthful side of what they are. And then from there, you can kind of go on. I ask them, what if they can remember a time they've had great service and what that looked like, because that's another thing is, you want to recognize great service. And most people have an idea in the last month and a half that they've gone out and had someone treat them above and beyond. One of my favorite companies is Nordstrom's, and they're renowned for their service. And one of my favorite stories is an older lady brought home some tires and returned some like snow tires, I think, to Nordstrom's. And the manager at Nordstrom's returned them even though she had bought them at Sears or something like that. And he told, that lady's going to come back to the store regardless now. And it's just little things like that you don't think would be a good idea and a good business move. You'd just be surprised at how many times people come back if you go on above and beyond and try and make them feel special. So I try and find the workers that are going to, represent that for my store, because I'm not going to be able to be in there 100% of the time. And, I am 100% trying to take care of all my customers, but I also want to find those people that when I'm not there, they still have that same passion for service that I do.
Let me ask you, do you do any kind of testing is that part of the process?
We, originally, I did not. One of the services that Papa Murphy's offers, it's called Strategic Profiles, and it's an online application, and they ask about 25 or 30 different personality profiles that just say, does this describe you? You've done the personality profile testing, so we did that for this store. I think it's somewhat helpful, but I also think that some of the questions, obviously kind of what the answer the person is looking for too. So I think there's some of that. It's helpful, but I don't think there's any substitution for sitting down with someone and kind of getting to know what they're about.
Well, I agree with you 100%. The way testing always worked for me best when I was in business, and then when I did try to teach my the mentoring I do and the consulting, is it's basically there to confirm what you already know. Yeah. And the red light goes on when it doesn't confirm what you had as a feeling. Sure. And that's what testing really is about. And now, of course, in certain jobs, you test whether people understand numbers. Construction jobs, can they read a rule of tape? Mm-hmm. You'd be amazed at, or can they count change? There's a good test I used to use for people to run a cash register and that kind of thing to make sure they understood money. Of course, today everything's electronic, so whether they needed to do that or not. But no, I think testing is there. It's a good tool, though, to act as a confirmation, if you will.
Yeah.
Now, when you all do your interviewing, do you have more than one person do the interview, or are you the sole individual who interviews a new hire?
It depends. When we first did initial interviews for the first store, me and Praveen were both there together, if we could be. I think that helps. I don't think it's necessarily imperative that you have more than one person, but it also does help to get a second set of eyes, because sometimes you're going in with a bias. Like for instance, I'm interviewing a kid that's an Eagle Scout today. I already think he's going to be fantastic. That's already my preconceived notion. I could bring someone else in and say, well, they'll bring a completely fresh perspective from it. And that's another big thing. I think that's, to be successful in business, you have to have an open mind, and you have to be willing to see things from a different perspective, not necessarily to always go with that, but to keep an open mind and to consider that.
Well, I would agree with that 100%. Let me ask you, what is the biggest challenge you have in operating your store, the one that's been open a few months? What's the biggest daily challenge you face?
The biggest daily challenge. Initially, at Papa Murphy's, we weren't sure what the volume was going to be. We passed out, I think, 5,000 free pizza coupons the first week we were open, and so you don't really know how many of those are going to come back and be redeemed. And so we make all of our dough from scratch in the morning, and so that was the big problem initially. Well, not a problem, but the big difficulty was forecasting sales correctly, so that A, you weren't making way too much dough and you're throwing away $100 worth of product at the end of the night because it expires. Otherwise, my worst fear was always at 7 o'clock to tell people, hey, I'm out of food, I can't serve you. I mean, that's the worst. I don't ever want to turn someone away. And so that was the most nerve-wracking part from the first process, was, trying to hit the numbers and figure out how much dough we needed. I mean, I remember one of the nights, it was a Wednesday, we sold 270 pizzas. It was actually the last day that the free pizza coupons were viable. And so I was in the back sheeting dough as people were, making the pizzas on the line. And it was just like it was one of those Disney cartoon things where it's just a Ford factory line. It was pretty impressive, and it was fun. So that was my initial biggest difficulty. Now I'm to the point where I'm trying to find processes and, ways to make work more efficient in our store, whether that be cutting down on labor costs, whether that be making an opening and closing checklist so that people know and can, automate processes a lot more. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is making it more efficient now that we've opened and we've kind of developed a customer base.
Well, it's nice to get at least a few months' experience under your belt, right?
Yeah.
That'll carry you into the new store. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little break here now, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Andy a little bit about his work-life balance and some goal setting he was telling me about. So appreciate it if you'd stay with us, and we'll be back with you in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Bonita DeRosa, Animal Control Officer for the City of Willis. We invite you to tune in to Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. for the Willis Hour. On the first Thursday of the month, the Willis Hour will be covering upcoming events and news about the city. Join in the conversation with your city officials and other leaders in the community. On the third, we will be doing a recap of the last city council meeting. The mission of the City of Willis is to provide high-quality services, accountability, and professional commitment to our citizens. We pledge to provide those who live, work, and visit our city an effective government that is open and responsive to the needs and values of the community. Again, we invite you to tune in on Lone Star Internet Radio every first and third Thursday of the month at 11 for the Willis Hour.
Texas Travel Baseball Hour on Lone Star Internet Radio with your host Shannon Spencer. Every Friday at 1 p.m. we will talk Texas Youth Travel Baseball, bringing you the results from all major Texas sanctions, upcoming tournaments, and Texas Travel Baseball's own Team of the Week and statewide rankings. We will feature special guests from the youth team coaches, former Major League Baseball players, college coaches, and you. Give us a call during our show at the Lone Star call-in line, 936-647-3776. If you missed the show, check out our archives at texastravelbaseballhour.com and irlonestar.com. So catch the Texas Travel Baseball Hour every Friday at 1 p.m. on Lone Star Internet Radio.
This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor, welcoming you back to the final segment of today's show on the Weekly Business Hour. And our guest again is Andy Bohlig, who he and his partner Praveen are the proud owners of 1.5, if you will, Papa Murphy's Pizza, soon to be 2, hopefully by the end of the week.
1.8 now.
1.8, that's right. You're real close.
Yep.
And I can tell you're really excited about opening that new store. One of the things that you and I talked about, and sometimes I think our listeners get a little tired of hearing me about it, talk about it, the subject of goal setting and planning and whatnot. So I'm very pleased to hear other business people talk about it and that it has made their business, their opportunities a lot more successful. Talk about some of the goal setting you've done using, for example, 2014.
Sure. Well, like I said, I grew up playing sports. That was always a huge part of my life. And, my dad from a very early age was kind of always instilling in me the fact that, you have to set a goal and strive to make it. So, growing up, I remember I was never the best hockey player. I was, on the B2 team or the B1 team, and one of my goals was always to make the A team because I had some friends on there and stuff like that. And so he said, I want you to write this down. I want you to look at it every morning, and I want you to, work for it that whole entire day. I ended up working that entire winter and ended up making the A team. And that was, an early time where that kind of got instilled in me that goal setting is important. I didn't really think a whole lot about it, and I didn't, practice it probably as much as I should have going throughout college. We at TCU, we're playing football at TCU. That's one of the big things. We didn't do it personally, but, our Coach Patterson, we had a big triangle on the meeting room wall, and everyone would sign the triangle at the beginning of the season, and it basically was on your building blocks. So at the bottom, you'd have win your preseason game, do good in your 2-a-day tryouts, and then in the next pyramid would be win all your non-conference games. Then you pyramid up, you have your conference games that are super important, so you have to try and win all those. And then the next one is make it to a bowl game, and then you got, finally to the top was win the national championship. And so you always want to be working towards something. If you don't have a goal to be working towards, you're kind of stuck in the same place. And that's one of the things that I try and think about personally every day at some point is, am I doing something right now that's making myself a better person? If I'm sitting down watching TV, I'm watching some reality TV on, E. Like, what is that? How is that personally enhancing my life? What is that doing to make me a better person, to make me smarter, to make me a better businessman? So goal setting is super important to me because it's a reminder to me that, I love sitting down and watching stupid crap. Everyone loves that, but at the same point, it's kind of a reminder to me to, you can't do this. You have things that you should be doing, that you need to be doing. And I think I told you, one of my favorite books that I continually go back and reread is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And it was written back in the 1920s. And he was basically the first guy to ever study what character traits made all the wealthy people. And he studied Andrew Carnegie, he studied Henry Ford, studied all those guys that made, billions of dollars in today's money back in the day, and kind of put a blueprint down of what they did to be successful. And a lot of it's goal setting. It's determination, not giving up when you have a setback. For instance, our general contractor running out of money. A lot of people could have just thrown up their hands and, go home, don't stop construction. We got to figure this out now. I mean, we knew we had to get open. We'll figure it out as it goes along, but we'll address those challenges as they come ahead. But don't ever give up. The positive self-talk. I think a lot of people are their own worst critics. If you tell yourself that you're a terrible businessman or you're terrible with money or you can't remember someone's name, that goes into your self-conscious, and those are self-fulfilling prophecies at the end of the day. And you need to talk to yourself and encourage yourself in a way that you build yourself and you become a better person. And I think that's one of the big main focuses of that book is just keeping that positive mindset.
Well, I think you make a lot of sense out of that. I think focus, discipline. It's difficult to do that on a day in and day out basis. Mm-hmm. I mean, 5, 6, 7 days a week. I mean, your stores are open, I assume, 7 days a week.
Yep.
So you've got to be queued up, if you will, every day. Make sure the stores are open and all the things that are happening that need to happen. Mm-hmm. Particularly since you're geared to fresh ingredients and some real, what I consider some neat things about how you're doing your product. So there's no doubt about that. What about your planning? One of the things you mentioned when we did kind of a pre-interview is that you're personally challenged in doing budgets and things. We all are challenged by something. That's not the most fun thing we do.
Yeah.
How do you get yourself up to do a budget? Because I assume that's very important in the business you're in.
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the most frugal person in the world. I'm not the best personal budgeter in the world. My grandpa's fantastic. He balances his checkbook, keeps all his receipts at the end of the night. I wish I was more like that. I'm not, but I recognize that about myself, and I know that it's one of the most important things, especially having a small business, is knowing where your money is coming and going. And so there's a few programs that I'll mention real quick that I've found to be real helpful. There's a website called mint.com, and that's a personal finance. What you do is you link all your bank account statements to that, whether you have Wells Fargo or Bank of America, and it automatically downloads all your transactions through the day. It'll set a budget, and it'll let you know where you're at in your budget throughout the month as you go along. So that's kind of more of a passive program. I used that back in college. It's a really good program, but if you don't have discipline, like I don't, it's not the best because you can kind of just set it and then forget about it and you don't have to keep checking it. There's another program that I just found about 6 months ago. It's called You Need a Budget. It's YNAB as the abbreviation for it. And You Need a Budget is similar to Mint, although it does not automatically download all of your transactions for you. So you actually have to go in and manually enter in all of your purchases or whatever throughout the day. They have an Android, they have an iPhone app, they have an app for iPad, you have one on your desktop. So you can do it as you're out in going, doing all that stuff, but it forces you to actually take out your phone and put in what you just spent. So it's a little bit more, it keeps you focused and doing it more. So that's one of the big programs that I've found to be successful, and it kind of teaches you to get off that paycheck to paycheck type of living situation.
Well, that's interesting. And I think in business, having a budget and trying obviously is critical, particularly if you have any kind of bank lending and whatnot. You have those people being the bankers watching to see if you meet your projections. So it becomes critical. Work-life balance, something we touched on. I mean, you're a single guy.
Yeah.
So you don't have a family, so to speak, that you have to respond to.
Not really.
I noticed in your bio you have a dog, though, which is you respond. They have some requirements. But what do you do? I mean, you're a young entrepreneur. You're open 7 days a week. Do you work 7 days a week?
Initially, when we opened the first Conroe location, I was working 7 days a week. I was putting in 90-hour work weeks, not all the time, but between 75 and 90 for the first month and a half. And that it does affect you. Even it's tough to maintain things out of your life when you're not focused on them. So I was in a relationship, but I ended up losing that because I focused too much on my business. So there are things that you do have to to keep in the back of your head that you have to focus on. But at the same point, obviously that this is the most important thing in your life right now. You've got your money on the line. You've got some of your family's money on the line. Your reputation is on the line. Everyone in my circle of friends and everything like that knows that I'm opening a business, and I'm not going to let it fail. So that was the most important thing in my life at that point. Now once we found we have great employees. I found 3 or 4 that I can trust implicitly that can close the store, that can open the store. So I don't necessarily have to be there from open to close now every day, but I'm at some point going in there, checking on them, making sure everything's okay, asking if there was any issues last night, just be in constant communication with them. As far as work-life balance goes, it's the one thing I love about being an entrepreneur is even though you could be working long hours, you never really feel like you're working, because at some point if I need to run an errand, I can run an errand. That was my big thing with working in the finance and the corporate world, is I felt like I was a prisoner at, I was sitting there looking at, 6 o'clock, I get to go home now. When you're working for yourself and when you're building something and you have all the reward coming to yourself, there's a lot of drive and there's a lot of passion towards fulfilling that. And so when I said, you want to find your passion in the beginning, in the first segment, that's something that obviously making pizza is probably not my passion. I haven't thought that at 7, but being in the service industry, serving people, making sure that everyone's happy, that's one of my passions. And talking to people, that's one of my passions. And so I get to meet new people every day, get to strike up conversations with complete strangers. That's a lot of fun. So as far as work-life balance goes, though, now I'm not working 90 hours a week. I probably will be starting this week now that we have the second store opening and all that. But, it's good. I like reading a lot. I like going outside. I have a 3-year-old Siberian Husky. I'd said he's kind of my baby, and he acts like a baby most of the time, so I have to deal with him quite a bit. I love movies. I get involved in politics. We probably won't get into that because that's another discussion topic altogether. But that's kind of one of my passions. More not the day-to-day stuff, but more of the high level, policy debates and stuff like that. I really enjoy getting down into that too. So, just find out what you love, and give every day your best. I think is a good piece of advice to give to everyone.
Well, it's good and straightforward, and I 100% agree with you. Let me ask you as kind of a final question as we wrap up today's interview. What do you see in the future for yourself, for Papa Murphy's, 3, 4, 5 years down the road?
We just bought 2 more potential locations, right off of 1488, and then one right in the center of the Woodlands off of Kirkendall and Woodlands Parkway. So, ideally, I'd like to see us have 5 stores within the next 5 years. As far as after that, Papa Murphy's is growing like crazy right now. I think at some point this year they will go public. They've kind of been looking for a bank to take the IPO for them. So I'm very excited about that growth with Papa Murphy's. I think once they get public, I think the name recognition will grow like crazy. And like I said, they already have a fantastic product. So that end is taken care of. One of the things I'm aware of about myself is I like to jump from one thing to the other. I have difficulty staying on one thing. There's so many things that interest me and that I think, oh yeah, it'd be awesome. I'd be good at doing that. And I have to focus, sorry guys. I have to focus myself and make sure that, I complete one job before I start jumping off to another. And so there's, I love animals. I've always thought about maybe in 10 years, once I have enough franchises that I don't necessarily have to be in the store all the time, maybe go back and do a veterinary thing or something like that. I'll take it as it comes. I'm a young guy. I'm still changing my passions and what I feel passionately about. So we'll take it as it comes. It's kind of a 1 to 2 year plan right now. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and the idea of being flexible. Andy, I want to thank you so much for taking time to come in. Last week sounded like a real challenge. You've survived it,
yep.
Which is part of gaining experience in business.
That's
I
right.
speak with a lot of experience on that, but now you have a battle scar, so to speak, and you came out of it. Wish you a lot of luck in opening your store this week. Please, if you would, though, give our audience, once again, how they can contact you and where your stores are located.
Sure. So if you want to contact me personally, my business cell phone number is 832-833-5216. Go ahead and contact me if you have any questions about, if you're looking at starting a franchise or you have any questions at all about running your own business. I probably won't have the perfect answer, but I can sure as heck try my hardest. Our 2 stores are located, we have one open in Conroe right now. It's located off of 105 and 45 in the Hastings Panera Specs Liquor parking lot. We're in the back corner there. And then also we're just going to be opening, I'm going to say Thursday. That's an optimistic view, but for sure by next Monday we'll be open off 242 and 45. And that's on the west side towards Gosling, right in front of College Park High School and in front of Lone Star College.
That's great. And I wish you a lot of luck, you and your partner, in what you're doing. You've got a tremendous thing going. I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this week in the Lone Star Weekly Business Hour. And I'd ask you to plan to join us next week when our special guest will be Rick Simmons. Rick is the owner of Plus 40 Fitness Studio and soon to be published Plus 40 Fitness and Health magazine. Check out the Lone Star website at www.irlonestar.com for more information. Always remember that Lone Star Internet Radio is Conroe and Montgomery County's community radio station where the community comes to connect. Lone Star, serving Montgomery County from the heart of Conroe. Now sit back and enjoy the true Texas country music brought to you by Lone Star. See you next week, partner. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Business Hour. Our special business guest next week will be Rick Simmons, owner of Plus 40 Fitness Studio and the publisher of Plus 40 Fitness and Health magazine. Check out the Lone Star website at www.irlonestar.com for more information. Always remember that Lone Star Internet Radio is Conroe and Montgomery County's community radio station where the community comes to connect.